I may have seen a little bit more of what that schedule looks like for Ohio State heading into next Tuesday. I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Oh, boo.
But in terms of, like, I don't know, not having to deal with back-to-back road games or spreading out some of the biggest games on the schedule, I think Ohio State will probably be pretty happy with what's revealed.
Pretty happy with that, and we're pretty happy with what's gone down in the last 2 weeks on the NIL front, Austin.
Yeah.
I had to get off the ledge, and I am full in on a national championship next year. But with that being said, is there anybody else out there that we might be going after? These last two teams have some time for their guys to get in the portal. Do you see anything big happening out of those two teams that just played on Monday night?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, Justin. We'll see. The way that Ohio State approached this, I think that there may still be a depth piece or two that materializes. The pond is still open. As Bobby said at the live show at Roosters earlier this week, you can't throw any more fish in there, but you can reel them out. And so there's a possibility that they could continue to look at that and see what the options are. Now, you look at classes getting started and workouts getting underway in the Woody and spring ball and all that. This isn't a limitless opportunity in front of Ohio State, but if there's something that materializes on the defensive line primarily, I think Ohio State would look at that. Again, any conversation about this will be contingent on how much somebody is looking for in terms of playing time and or money. So we'll see if any of that is out there for them. But I really think that we're mostly looking at the 2026 roster for Ohio State intact at this point. And then that allows us to turn our attention towards seeing what Ryan Day will do with the coaching staff and what moves he wants or needs to make on that front. So we're sort of into phase two of this busy January.
He's Austin Ward with us here on the Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems fan guest hotline. Is that the most pressing issue right now, Austin? Kind of figuring out this next offensive coordinator / head coach of the offense. And what does the timeline look for that? And what does really kind of everything look like now that Ryan Day and this Ohio State team has gotten through this phase of the offseason navigating the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think that moves to number one on the to-do list. I know that, for Ohio State fans and, looking at this over the last couple of weeks and thinking, and I get it, not speaking for everyone, like it's been 7 weeks or approximately since Brian Hartline took the South Florida job, and Ohio State knew that it would need to replace the primary play caller on the coaching staff. I've sort of learned my lesson about asking or demanding or suggesting, or however we want to phrase it, that there needs to be intensity and urgency to attack all those. And Ryan Day's more than earned the benefit of the doubt in the way that he's approached these hires and making sure that he can approach and interview and try and find the best fit at any level of college football or the NFL. And that latter is what, is really dragging this out to the end part of January and maybe around the Super Bowl, because the NFL coaching carousel really didn't start spinning until a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So they're in the process of hiring their coordinators, filling out their coaching staff, getting assistants in place. And that's not to say that the Buckeyes are hoping for scraps to fall from the table, not by any stretch of the imagination, but they have one of the most appealing jobs on the marketplace anywhere available, with Julian Sayin returning, and so a Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback and the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith back, a veteran offensive line, plus the financial pieces that they can offer, plus maybe this spot for the Ohio State offensive coordinator might not have to go on the road or do any recruiting. I think that there's maybe a commitment here or perhaps a goal that you put one of those head coaches of the offense in place, and you might wind up revolutionizing the way that big-time college football programs view their accountable staff and how many people they're going to put in place to do that. There are other programs that are working around that and getting creative with 12 or 13 guys that you would consider full-time, but as far as I know, nobody has done that with an offensive coordinator or potentially even a defensive coordinator with Matt Patricia. That's not necessarily a prediction, just that's sort of the way that this is going, and that, the athletic department and Ross Bjork and the president and with Ted Carter, like they've all been, committed to putting the resources in place for the coaching staff, because when we look at this forward, again, I don't know, Beamer, an exact day that it'll be finished. I threw out the Super Bowl. That's, this was around the time that Bill O'Brien was hired a couple of years ago, but Chip Kelly was much later. Matt Patricia, I think you and I were talking about it earlier in the week. That
February 12th,
like after the Super Bowl. So, we'll see how that all winds up shaking out. But, if we are now in this new philosophy of shorter rosters, less depth, paying more for an NFL-style roster, then the difference, what sets a program apart is the X's and O's and the ability to find that schematic edge. And I think that assembling a larger coaching staff and certainly the contracts that are in place for them might be a pathway to doing so. And that's sort of the idea. We'll see if they're able to execute that, but that does move to the front burner at this point now that the roster is largely settled.
I agree with you. I think he's done such a great job at hiring, and I think we give him time to do so. Is he going to need to look into a defensive coordinator, or is that kind of settled? And I'm sure you don't have a great answer, but is recruiting, is finding a coach that is good on the recruiting trail, is that kind of dead nowadays with how everybody seemingly is going to just go to the portal and find older guys and bring them in? I mean, you're not recruiting high school kids as much as you have in the past. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, a lot of questions there, Jay-Z, and difficult to answer all of them directly, to be totally honest with you. I think if I was wagering, I would say that Matt Patricia is likely back, but that, as we all know, the odds can change in a hurry. And if we're, live betting on this, it depends on other factors that, as we sit here on this Wednesday night, I'm not aware of an NFL team putting actual dollars and cents in a contract offer in front of Matt Patricia, which is why, I don't think there's any resolution. He knows what Ohio State is willing to do to keep him. I think that the Buckeyes have communicated that, whether that's like an actual piece of paper or not, or just like the way the negotiations have played out. I'm not in the room for that, but I think Ohio State has made it clear that as long as there's any rational, reasonable offer presented to him to just be a coordinator, quote unquote, just a coordinator at the NFL level, they will match that or get close, exceed it, however that part plays out, to make sure that he can stay. And I think that goes a long way. And that amount, I think, is probably going to be more than it has ever spent on a coordinator in the history of Ohio State football, and probably the largest amount in the country right now. So you'll see if that winds up being the case. As I've said, a bunch to you guys over the last couple of weeks, what the Raiders did with Chip Kelly a year ago was caught everybody off guard, which is why I think Matt Patricia is well within his rights to, if someone wants to do the same for him, then he's got to do what's right for his family in that scenario. So we'll see how that plays out. But back to the other part of that, the relationships are important. Is it as vital as it used to be? No, I think some of what you're fact-checking, not just whether a guy can play for Ohio State anymore, but what's motivating them. And if a position coach or a coordinator just has to show up and negotiate a contract and not talk about football and culture and scheme and all the other factors that go into actually being a contributing member of the Ohio State roster, well, that's when the Buckeyes can walk away. So, that information is still vital, and a lot of times you do need to get that face-to-face. But does that have to be a coordinator? Does it win you a PR battle or a relationship battle to send in, a coordinator or somebody with the Block O on their pullover into the high schools the way that it used to 5, 10, 20 years ago? I'd say probably not.
Austin, before we get you out of here, this is purely hypothetical, all right? Just in case you may or may not have actually seen Ohio State's conference schedule for this year. Is Ohio State playing Michigan at home the weekend after Thanksgiving? Can you confirm or deny those reports?
Oh, you want me to really give it away, huh?
I'm just asking.
Firm is the one that suggested it should be the opener.
I know he did.
He's not getting his way.
That's why I asked. I just wanted to clarify on that, because I know he is a staunch supporter in opening up the season with that game.
We do not want to give Tony Petitti any ideas, Beam. We know he's listening.
Yeah, that's true.